this computer. Well, welcome everybody to the weekly study. We are on chapter 21. This is near the end. We've only got a little bit to cover. You see, we're going to talk about something called the New Jerusalem, and it actually spans both chapters 21 and 22, and this concept of a new heaven and new earth. It is two visions. We see that one chart that shows the number of visions, vision 15 and vision 16. If I had split Revelation, I might have done it along vision lines rather than chapters, but we deal with what we inherit. So we're going to see really the beginnings of two visions, or the end of one vision, the beginning of a new vision in chapter 21. And it's important that we start to recognize that in John's vision, this is the first time since early Genesis that he's seeing a vision of the earth free from sin. This is a monumental experience for John. And in fact, at one time, he kind of loses track of what he's doing, and he has to be, called out from the teacher, hey, write this down. So it's fun to see how he'd react, and I'm sure we would as well. We're going to start with a new heaven and new earth and work our way down through 5 other events: the high mountain, New Jerusalem, the temple, and then this light that replaces our own sun. Lots of things to think about. We're going to see really an echo from Isaiah. Well, this group studied Isaiah some time ago, and there's a quote here from Isaiah 65. I will create a new heaven and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind. But be glad and rejoice forever in what I will create, for I will create Jerusalem to be a delight, and its people a joy. I will rejoice over Jerusalem and take delight in my people. The sound of weeping and crying will be heard no more. So we have that excerpt from Isaiah, and we're going to see it reiterated in John's vision tonight. One-page summary of Revelation 21 is his witnessing of the unveiling of a new heaven and a new earth. We're going to talk about, what extent of heaven? Do you mean even the part where God is going to turn new? So we'll talk about that. And we're going to get back to God dwelling with his people, back to his original design. Remember the Garden of Eden, the greatest joy was Adam and Eve with God in the garden. No intermediary needed, no priests, no one to interfere, direct contact with the Creator. The old passes away, and they're going to use terms like a bride, because again, that part of the life, not only in your 20s, 30s, when you were getting married, were you physically in the best shape and you're hopeful for the future, but your bride, what a wonderful experience that was. So they use that analogy to talk about just how fantastic this experience is going to be at seeing this reunion between the bride and the bridegroom. We're going to learn that there needs to be no more temple, because there's no need for sacrifice. There's no sin. There is the direct access to the Creator. So no more death, sorrow, pain. And we're going to see God living. So this is a wonderful vision that John's going to share with us in 21. Let's first talk about heaven. They had concepts of first, second, and third heaven. You and I, think about the difference between an airplane and a rocket ship. So, that first heaven is just right above in the air. When I say, we saw Jesus going up into the heavens, it's just really as high as the clouds. That's what we're seeing as kind of that first heaven. The second heaven is the scene you see when the sun is not shining, where you're able to see all the way out to the stars and the galaxies. That's considered the second heaven, kind of the celestial realm. The third place where God dwells, that's the third heaven. So if you have those definitions, when we talk about a new heaven and a new earth, it's really going to be those first 2 levels. We're going to get a new earth and we're going to get new heavens that we look at. And I love the speculation here is to think about, what's that going to look like? We're standing on earth in the new earth. Are we still seeing stars? Well, we know there's no sun, but are there other stars? I mean, we know today that there are, I don't know the right mathematical term, but there are gazillions of galaxies and gazillions of stars in those galaxies. Is that all going to be renewed? Is there just going to be one place that we dwell, or are we going to still enjoy that gorgeous majesty? Has it done its job of saying, this is how big God is and this is how small you are, And maybe that message doesn't need to be delivered anymore. So I love speculating about that. That's not going to be covered in tonight's study, but it does give us something, as you know, better than football to talk about. There is a discrepancy or a disagreement, as of course there has to be in Revelation, between what is meant by the word we study tonight when it says new. Is it new as in everything's destroyed and replaced, or is it purified and healed? So there's some disagreement between annihilation and renovation. And there's a couple of verses that the supporters quote here. One from Second Peter that talks about it being a complete destruction, and another from Genesis that talks about it being more of a transformation. And I will tell you that the majority opinion splits right along the same lines as those who believe in the rapture and those who believe in more of an amillennial view. And what it comes down to is they say, is God abandoning what he originally said is very good and really burning it up into fire? We've heard sermons, of course, for years about how everything that we understand today is going to be burned away. And is that, complete annihilation, or is it really just part of that refining? That you still have to have fire, you still have to burn things up, but almost like a house remodel in Pleasanton, as long as you leave one wall up, it's not considered complete destruction. You're still, it's a remodel, and you can keep your mortgage and all those other things. So just know there is some discussion about, how much of what God does here is all new. Verse by verse, the first four verses, we're going to see John see that. There's going to be some symbolism in there. One of the biggest ones is the fact that he sees no more sea, and of course, the sea to the Israelites was a place of chaos and a place of fear, and it could be symbolic that he's saying that doesn't exist anymore in the new heaven and new earth. He sees again that beautiful bride. He hears God declare that God's dwelling is back with humanity. And this is essentially that complete rewind now back to God's original design for Eden, merely without the opportunity to sin. And the beautiful passage of wiping away every tear, no more death, no more mourning. And as we said last time, if there's no death, you can't be killing chickens and eating them. You're going to have to survive on something closer to a vegetarian diet. Verses 5 through 8, he's going to make this proclamation: I make all things new. And he restates his role as Alpha and Omega. He restates that this inheritance is just for those who have become his children. And he does give that final warning that the liars and cowards and the unbelieving, their portion is the second death, that lake of fire. So he reestablishes who he is and what his judgment is. This vision of the New Jerusalem it's hard to envision as we'll read through it. He talks about one of the angels that has already fulfilled their job steps forward and shows John this beautiful bride. The city's shining, and he describes it in terms like jasper and gold, but then struggles and says, gold, but clear. So he's struggling to just convey how beautiful this is and how spectacular it is. And he sees gates that are named for the tribes of Israel, and he sees foundations for each of the apostles. He also sees this beautiful measurement, and he's asked to measure it, and he sees a measurement implies ownership. When you get into a new house and you're measuring the windows for new curtain rods, it's because you own it. So we saw that same thing stated in Revelation 11. It's a 12,000 stadia, and stadia translates into about a 1,500 square mile pyramid or cube. So we're not quite sure what that shape's going to be. Cube seems to make shape. The point of which is that there is room for everybody that you could imagine that is going to be in this. If you look at that as fitting in the center of the United States, it would take up a good half of the continental U.S. And the old joke about the man who tries to take it with him, he packs his gold into a suitcase, into his coffin, and he shows up only to learn that that's paving material up here in heaven. Uh, and we get that term, the pearly gates. There's some symbolism behind the jewels that are going to be discussed in verses 18 to 21. Once again, they mirror that priest's breastplate that we learned about in Exodus. It represents the 12 tribes, so you're going to see those beautiful jewels called out again. Because of their value and purity, again, these are the terms that John uses to describe it. And the city reflects God's own holiness rather than generating any of its own glory. This cosmic reversal also talks about abundance. In one world, those kind of things are the purest, hardest to find, most difficult, scarcity things like gold and jewels. Well, in heaven, they're super abundant. That's just what there is because, that is the opposite of how things have always been. And they are all distinct, but they're yet in beautiful harmony, just like all the people of all the different tongues, all the different bodies, all the different languages, all that they are united in belief of Jesus. So all that symbolism is going to be expressed. We again are going to learn there is no temple since God and the Lamb are the temple. There's no sun or moon because all the light comes from God's glory. The Lamb is its lamp, and the nation walks by its light, so long as you are those who are included in the Lamb's book of life. Um, just a heads up, next week when we finish up the book, the study, it'll come time for you to make up your own mind, not necessarily for majority rule or opinion, but just start thinking that there are people out there that are going to share their faith and share their understanding. And one of the big questions is, did you, from your reading, conclude that there is or is not a rapture? And does it matter? Do we get our glorified bodies and will we reign with Christ during this millennium? And then the final question is that tribulation something that you see as a actual period, and is that in the future? And the reason that'll be important for you to answer is just to help you articulate with your brothers around the campfire those kinds of discussions. And again, how that affects your belief. Does it make you worry about the future? Does it make you confident about the future? If there is a rapture and you're suddenly still here, does that mean you're done or do you still have a chance? We know the truth now through our studies. So that's something that we'll look forward to discussing next week. Let's turn off the share and stop the recording.